Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching The Naturalist Capitalist, and I'm your host, Reed Coverdale, and I've got a jar of disappearing lemonade with me today. So if that gets distracting, sorry. But I've got Mike back on the show again. How's it going, Mike? It's been a while.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So, we got an election coming up here in, 3 weeks now or so? And I am going to turn my ballot in tomorrow, but I've got it. I don't know if it shows up. I've got it here, and I filled in Joe Jorgensen already. I have seen a lot of pandering maybe not even pandering so much as demanding or shaming maybe from the Republicans, like that we have to vote for them because if we don't, the radical socialist Democrats are going to take our guns away and take our freedoms away. And this is our last chance if we want any of the American dream to survive. We have to vote Trump or it's all going to be gone. Of course, we've heard this for years. Yep. So have you heard a lot of that, seen a lot of that? Have you noticed the same thing?
Yeah, it seems to be the voices that come out this time of year who are always calling for, well, maybe this wasn't the candidate we wanted, but we're gonna support him anyway. Especially the left right now. I mean, I remember when Hillary Clinton was running and it was Hillary versus Donald Trump and everyone was like, we don't like Donald Trump, but he's so much better than Hillary Clinton, so we got to vote for him. And it's like, oh, this isn't what I wanted, but I mean, yeah. I voted for Trump last time because he was, he had some semblance of business and he was an outsider coming to Washington. And you really can't say the same thing about him right now.
Right.
So, I think it'll be his election. It's up to him to it's more up to Biden to win the election than it is for Donald Trump to lose it. I think Donald Trump will be hard pressed to get the same level of support that he had last time. We'll see what happens, but I mean, I don't think that's a good thing, but looking at my present situation, I'm supporting George Jorgensen last time, and it had more to do with Gary Johnson than Donald Trump last time. So
right, yeah. I mean, Donald Trump, I didn't support him in 2016, mostly because of his immigration stance. But when he did win, I had no remorse over the fact that Hillary lost because I despised her. And I thought, okay, there's a lot about Trump that I really don't like. I think he'll be terrible. But there are some things he's promised that I hope he delivers on. Like he was very critical of the Iraq war. I wouldn't call him an anti-war candidate because that's not what I heard in his campaign, but he was critical of the Iraq war and the idea of endless wars. So he sounded kind of promising there. He did talk a lot about the Federal Reserve and how we were in a bubble and how there had been a fake recovery from 2008, all stuff that was absolutely true. And then he talked about, cleaning house in Washington, getting people who weren't swamp politicians. So those were the kind of positive things I was hoping that he'd deliver on. He hasn't, in my mind, delivered on any of them at all. I think when it comes to the wars, maybe in a verbal sense, he's delivered. He talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. And you have to judge a man by what he does, not by what he says. And the troop levels when he entered office in the Middle East were about the same as they are now. He added a lot, and then he took a lot away, but now they're basically the same they were in 2016. The Federal Reserve and the economy and the bubble he's talking about, I think Peter Schiff is right when he says that as soon as he got in, he claimed all those things as his own and started to change tune on all the things he'd been criticizing during his campaign. And then, he hired Jeff Sessions, Rudy Giuliani, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo. He's fired some of those guys, but I mean, you don't get credit for getting rid of someone if you hired them in the first place. It's been a constant stream of, I don't even want to say disappointment because I wasn't really expecting anything different, but just nothing has been hopeful or uplifting or inspiring about it. So there's just no impetus for me to hope that he wins because I don't really care,
Well, I still am of the opinion that he would be better than Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
But don't think that's the way things are going to play out. I really think, I could be wrong, and in many ways, that's not a good thing. That there are certain things that I'm sure the Democrats have planned that are just going to make our lives more difficult and worse.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Who knows what wars they have conjured up, planned, ready to go once the ink is dry on Joe Biden's inauguration speech. We'll find out. But I mean, boys, lovely state of things. I'm looking forward to the days when COVID is behind us. I know there's talk about a vaccine, but I'm sure as hell not going to be getting any needles stuck in my arm. Unless for some reason they require it for my employment or something along those lines. But not eagerly anticipating a vaccine.
Right.
But,
yeah. The last thing I wanted to talk about with Trump is I touched on it a little bit in the beginning there, but over the last couple weeks, he's personally called out libertarians a couple times on Twitter, and there was an interview that came out where he said if Gary Johnson hadn't run in 2016, I would have won the popular vote because I'm a very libertarian person. And then Rand Paul tweeted out that libertarians need to support Donald Trump. Austin Peterson is supporting Donald Trump. There's a lot of liberty people who are supporting him and telling us we need to support him, and then he himself is trying to appear libertarian to us. So I see a mirror image of this that's sort of happened on the left, and Joe Biden, it's weird. He's tiptoeing because he doesn't want to associate with Bernie Sanders too much to scare people away. But, he's had a coalition with Bernie, and he's, apparently he's going to try to appeal to progressives somehow. And I really admire the progressives who aren't buying it, even though I might disagree with them on some of their policies. I admire them for being principled and saying, no, Joe Biden is not Bernie, and I'm not going to vote for him. So I think that after seeing how Trump has been the last couple of weeks and after seeing Liberty Republicans support him, it actually makes me want him to lose. And I agree with you that he in policy would be better than Biden. I agree with that. And I think it's marginal, but I do think he'd be a little bit better. But I think it sends a stronger message. It's a lot like people who voted for Bernie and then voted for Trump in 2016. You know, they wanted to send a message to the Democratic establishment, we're not buying this. We wanted someone bold like Bernie, and he gave us Hillary. I kind of feel the same way because, like you, I do hail originally from the Republican Party. And, you know, what the party seemed to represent at one time is something that I still could be okay with now if they truly represented it. Like if they had become the party of Rand Paul in 2016, which was diminishing our involvement overseas, criminal justice reform, balancing the budget, you know, states' rights, individual liberties, that's a party I could get behind. It's morphed into something completely different. And for them to think that they're sort of entitled to the libertarian vote or that they represent us at all anymore, that makes me want them to lose. You know where I'm coming from?
Yeah, well, you know, it's often been assumed that the libertarians are a subset of the Republican Party, and it's I don't feel that's the case. And you know, I mean, the litmus test to look at this year or this past election was Tulsi Gabbard, because she is not a Republican, and she has not, you know, she might not espouse the same economic policy that you hear coming from like a Rand Paul or Thomas Massey or Justin Amash, where we're talking about, okay, we need to balance the budget, we need to worry about spending, we need to cut, you know, taxes and focus on opening up the playing field for business. She didn't really have that as part of her message, but the anti-war stuff was the really key that, you know, made me say, you know what, foreign policy is more important than anything we try to do domestically, because it has the largest impact on our federal budget. Right. So that's, you know, that's why I supported Tulsi. And, you know, if she decides to run again, I mean, we'll see what happens when she finishes her term in Congress. You know, I'm interested to see what her new little foundation is going to be like. You know, yeah. I don't know what she's planning. You know, I don't even know if she knows what she's planning right now. We'll see what happens. You know, I'm, you know, cautiously optimistic about that. But, you know, whatever happens in November, I'm kind of beyond at this point. You know, I just want this election to be over with so we could get back to talking about normal things and trying to figure out, put our lives back together after COVID ran a wreck through our economy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. What I mean, I agree specifically with the ready for this election to end. The problem is, I don't think it's going to end. I mean, I think it seems like we're in a new perpetual electoral state now because of how the election results were not really accepted in 2016, I would say. You know, a lot of people never got over that election. They've been fighting it all 4 years. I feel like we've kind of geared up for that for this election. I mean, there's so much hype built into this, so much anger and so much skepticism and so much conspiracy about how the votes will be counted. It doesn't seem to me that you can lead up to this election with that much preparation and then have like a clean result and people just move on with their lives and say, oh, okay. It seems like with all this hype that there's going to be some sort of fallout. So if there is, you know, say there's a blowout and Joe Biden crushes Trump, I don't feel like that's the result that anyone is expecting, even though it's likely to happen. They're not expecting it because we feel like there's going to be resistance either way. We feel like Trump is either not going to want to leave or he's going to contest the election, or that if Joe Biden loses, that the Democrats aren't going to accept it. Like, we're all mentally prepared for some sort of disaster that might not happen. And I don't know if we'll be able to accept it if it doesn't happen. It's almost like we want some catastrophe in a few weeks. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the greatest catastrophe that could happen is Joe Jorgensen could win a state. And, that would be the greatest catastrophe that has ever happened in our election system. I mean, let alone, I still hold on to the hope because, the number of people who don't vote has greatly exceeded the amount of people who do. So, they could swing an election if, this is going to be an interesting year because of the absentee ballots and the large volume of people who are going to be voting by mail.
Yeah.
And they might try to string it out and say, oh, in a typical election, they count, they have the result, and the number of absentee ballots is smaller than the margin of error. So they just ignore them and say, okay, well, this is who won.
Yeah.
We might not know the night, of the election who the president is because they might still say, well, we are going to wait because the race is too close to call and we have more shenanigans that we have to accomplish before, to rig the election one way or the other,
Yeah.
We'll see, but needless to say, I'm voting for Joe Jorgensen once I finally get my hands on the ballot, and I'm encouraging everyone to protest and say, okay, you know what? Not these two. We're going to vote for the other one. So
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually hopeful about some congressional races too. I mean, there's Ricky Harrington. He's pretty tight with Tom Cotton. I was hopeful for Brad Barron. I have no idea. They kicked him out of the debate last minute, so it was just Mitch McConnell and Amy McGrath. What's been amazing is I've actually seen that the duopoly is scared of third parties because they've been purposefully removing them from states. They just kicked the Green Party off the ballot in Pennsylvania. A lot of people know earlier in the year the Republicans tried to kick the Libertarians off in Texas, and the Democrats, I think, succeeded in kicking the Greens off in Texas. Right. You don't give this much attention and legal action against something that you're not worried about. If they were really not worried about us, they'd first of all let us come into the debates because our ideas are so radical or stupid or whatever they want to say that no one would really listen to them. It shows that they are terrified of this message. And, I think that was exemplified with Tulsi's campaign too. They shut her out, and it wasn't because she was just annoying or something. It's because she was saying some things that were really true and scared them. So that's a really good sign to me that we're intimidating the duopoly and that they are trying to shut us out, because that means we're actually gaining some ground, I think.
Well, the last gubernatorial election in New York State, Larry Sharpe was able to get party line ballot access by achieving greater than 50,000 votes. And I heard recently that there's a bill in New York State to raise the threshold to 160,000 to require obtain ballot in the state of New York for the party line. So, every opportunity that they have to raise that, it's like, okay, what is the requirement for poll support to get into the Democrat national debate? It's whatever Tulsi has and a little bit more. It's just, when the rules are arbitrary, they don't matter. They're gonna do whatever they want to do, and they're gonna malign anyone they want to malign, and there's nothing that us little peons can do about it.
Yeah.
I mean, but by the time New York State got around to voting for, the president in the primary, the race was already decided. So, I couldn't even vote for Tulsi Gabbard if I wanted to. It's a funny thing that this time we live in, where 6 states determine who the president's going to be. So.
Yeah, no, I did a video with Charles about this the other day. We sort of opened up by talking about Mike Lee's tweet about democracy and mob rule of the majority. What we have right now is way worse, and it's the rule of a very tiny minority. Like it's just a few people in the government, and then just as you pointed out, it's a few states. And I think people don't vote anymore because they don't even feel like it matters. It's not just that they don't like the candidates. So I remember when I was campaigning for Tulsi last year, and I'm, knocking on doors, I met several people who said, "Oh no, yeah, she's really cool, but there's no way she's gonna win, and my vote isn't gonna do anything." And I can't really blame them because it does feel that way sometimes. When you've got fraud or when you've got, things like ballot access and candidates not being allowed to speak, and you don't have ranked choice voting. It just makes it very disheartening, and there's not much encouragement to try to make a difference because it all seems so pointless.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah. So, what I am thinking is after this election's over, as you said, we're going to have to move on with our lives and, try to put the pieces back together. But I think it's important to try to figure out what direction we're going to go in coming down the pipe, because it seems like we always throw it together at the last minute right before an election, and we're always trying to get people on board like a few months before the thing kicks off. I think we need to start really early, and I'm not even just talking about the presidency. I'm talking about down ballot positions. But then the other thing is like just keeping people aware of what's going on, even when an election isn't happening, because I feel like no one pays attention to any of these things until there's an election year, until they feel like they have to make a difference. And then right after the election is kind of when whoever's been elected can get away with doing whatever they want because no one's really paying attention. I think we really need to move back to having a government that's accountable to the people and people who care about who's representing them in the government. So we, unfortunately, because we live in America, if we tell them that kids are in cages or we're bombing people overseas, they're not really going to care. We got to tell them this is why your life is going to be better if your politicians listen to you and do this, not this. That's going to really be my mission on this show, is to tell people how they can, like you said, put our lives back together or live more responsibly on a personal level, but also to try to inform people about what's going on in Congress, what's going on with the presidency, and tell them that they should care about more than just the hot topic issues they've been told to care about, or only to care on elections. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things like, what do they say? The support for the year presidential election is twice as high as midterm, and your congressman is on the ballot every other year. So if you don't like the job they're doing, you got to vote them out. And if you're not going to bother turning out to vote them out in the midterm, that system is supposed to designed to be responsive to the needs of the people. But it seems like the incumbent always seems to have the easiest time getting reelected versus the new guy coming in. But oh well, I digress.
Yeah, well, I'm also, as I already said, I've already voted for Joe Jorgensen, and Mike's voted for him too. And yeah, I encourage everyone who's watching to vote for Joe Jorgensen, especially if you agree with her principles. But even if you don't, I would suggest that it is the best protest vote you can give. Writing in someone's name or leaving it blank really doesn't send a message, because the poll counters don't care, and then the it won't be reported to the public. So if you can really send that middle finger of saying we are done with this two-party establishment, we want something new, I think that's the strongest voice you can have against our current system.
Yep, I agree.
All right, well, everyone get out there and vote for Joe Jorgensen. Let's see if we can start making some positive change. And Mike, thanks for coming back on. We'll have you on again.
Yeah, I'll see you guys again soon.